The Western East, Dreams and Realities. Over the years I've lived in Tokyo, I've had a number of visitors from abroad who have asked me to suggest tourist attractions. While places with a strong traditional feel, like Asakusa and Meiji Shrine, are highly appreciated, nobody has ever shown a strong interest in visiting Tokyo Tower. It's just a copy of the Eiffel Tower. I'm here to see Japan, not France, a friend once said. And yet to many Japanese, Tokyo Tower remains a quintessential symbol of the capital city. It seems that there is a difference between the way that Japanese and foreigners think about this symbol, a difference that can be noted in other areas in which traditionally Western things or ways have been adopted and adapted by the Japanese. Many foreigners are dismayed by the penetration of Western ways, and some wish that Japan was more Japanese. I think this view is most prevalent among visitors and those who have not been in the country long. Almost everyone who travels wants to experience something exotic and different from their daily life, one of the central attractions of travel in the first place. Others may have naive, romantic, or inaccurate views of Japan, seeing the country through the distorted lens of clichés drawn from pop culture and long-standing tradition. Foreigners who have been here longer tend to have a more positive, or at least tolerant, view, perhaps because they have learned to appreciate Japan for what it is, rather than what they dreamt it was. Food for thought. When I first came to Japan, I had a very rudimentary mental picture of Japanese food, but I was soon delighted to discover many new dishes. Even the Western-style food in Japan was different from what I had known or expected. Fortunately for me, I found most of the new food to be tasty in its own right, and never spent much time worrying about whether or not it was authentic. Is a wafu hamburger Japanese or Western? Certainly, it looks and tastes like no hamburger I've ever seen in America. I also discovered Western foods that were entirely unfamiliar to me, such as tonkatsu, castella, and competo. And I was quite surprised to learn that tempura, a food strongly associated with Japan, at least in America, was originally a Western dish. Such foods are generally enjoyed by foreigners in Japan, but some adaptations are met with less enthusiasm. Japanese put mayonnaise on everything and use far too much of it, one friend said, echoing a popular sentiment. Mayonnaise on salmon sushi, fried chicken, and salads, for example, is sometimes met with disgust by Western diners. Corn and seaweed on pizza are other frequent targets of complaint. Lost in translation. One of the most potentially confusing Western elements in Japan is so-called Japanese English or Japanglish, resulting from differences in usage of English loanwords and other expressions. In recent years, flagrant misuse of English is becoming less common, although it seems almost every foreigner has a story of Japanglish-based miscommunication. A friend of mine once found himself late for a meeting when told to be at the front of a hotel. To Japanese ears, this would automatically suggest what in English would be called the front desk of a hotel. To my friend, and most native speakers, however, it seemed to imply the outside or perhaps the inner lobby close to the building's main entrance. Another acquaintance who worked in marketing mentioned the confusion caused by the expression image up. When told a client needed an image up, this person thought it referred to physically moving an image closer to the top of the page, rather than improving the client's reputation. This turned out to be an expensive mistake for his company. Yet another foreigner reported confusion after he said, "I need some service," in the course of doing business. To a native speaker, this would sound like a simple request for help with an item, while the Japanese speakers thought he was asking for something to be provided without charge. The mistake was not costly in this case, but resulted in significant embarrassment on both sides. 5 examples of surprising Japanglish. No loan. This is the name of a company that provides loans, so why does it imply rejection in English? Pokari sweat. In English, the name conjures unappetizing images of something made from the sweat of some exotic animal. A pokari, perhaps. Mansion. Native speakers only use this term to describe very large and expensive houses, causing frequent misunderstanding. Boston bag. As a native of Boston, this has always been a puzzling expression for me. I had never heard anyone use it before coming to Japan. Naive. In English, the implication is innocent and thus a bit foolish, rather than having a pure heart. Foreign by design. Other areas of Western influence in Japan include design, architecture, and art. While the modernist and postmodernist architectural styles are truly international and do not look out of place in Japan, reproductions of older traditional European or American buildings and design, from the Victorian era or earlier, say, seem strange to many foreigners. I get an uncomfortable and lonely feeling when I walk by one particular Western-style house near my workplace, a friend confided once. It reminds me of home, but also reminds me how far I am from it. The fact that it used different materials and a smaller scale than an authentic Western house also bothered her. It seems like something that belongs in Disneyland. I wish they would stick with modern architecture or traditional Japanese style. The really real. So what makes so many Westerners uncomfortable with the West in the East? Part of the problem is related to romantic and unrealistic images of Japan, especially among younger or more inexperienced travelers. But this does not explain everything. Upon reflection, I think that seeing familiar things in an unfamiliar context causes discomfort for many people. The effect is one of something being slightly off. For example, a Georgian-style home does not look out of place in the UK or the east coast of the US, because it is to be expected and would be surrounded by many others of its type, having emerged organically as a style with several hundred years of history. Awareness of this shapes our sense of authenticity and our expectations. But is authenticity the sole criterion we should use to judge these things? Personally, I say no. It is important to remember that every culture borrows heavily from others, and even if the results are sometimes unusual, they can be enjoyed in their own right. A wafu hamburger is neither purely Japanese nor truly a Western thing, but I enjoy the taste of it regardless, and I would miss it if it disappeared. Learning to value things for what they really are, rather than how they validate fantasy or romantic misconceptions, simply feels more mature to me. Plus, such acceptance opens one to more possibilities in a world where the lines between different cultures are growing ever hazier.